Page 227. Now, children, Kate said in a motherly tone, stepping between them, let's not quibble about who's to blame. Blaming is wrong. The important thing is to get along with one another so that we may have better success cheating. Not funny, said Constance, but the joke did take the edge off the fury. And she said no more. Nor did Sticky, who regretted his outburst, not least because it was imprudent to discuss cheating in the corridor, or even worse, to mention Morse code. Was he crazy? What if he'd been overheard? The very prospect of the waiting room made him woozy. And so the morning passed, struggling to ignore hidden message broadcasts, concentrating on the lessons, cheating on every quiz. The four had a bit more to think about than the other students. Yet the boys continued making perfect scores, the girls were coming along nicely, the broadcasts eventually let up, and by lunchtime everyone was in an upbeat mood. At the same time, they were on high alert for clues. Between classes, they'd heard the rumor that Charlie Peters, one of the oldest messengers at the Institute, was graduating. He hadn't been in class all day, and some executives had been seen with him in the dormitory that morning. This was unusual thing, someone said. Graduates never spoke to a soul when they left. Apparently, they were too high and mighty to even say goodbye to old friends. They had no choice, said another student. The executives never allowed it. I wonder what that's all about, Renee said, as they made their way to the cafeteria for lunch. Good question, Kate said, and here's our chance for some answers. She pointed down an adjoining corridor where SQ Pedlerin had just appeared, escorting Charlie toward a distant exit. Quick, you try to talk to him while I distract SQ. How do you propose to do that? Constance asked. But Kate had already dashed down the corridor, and Renee and Sticky were hurrying after her. SQ, hey SQ, Kate called out. I wanted to ask you a question about your lecture this morning. SQ turned to see Kate barreling toward him. I'm afraid I can't talk right now. Before SQ could finish, Kate took a spectacular fall. Her feet shot out from under her. Her arms and legs flew in every direction. Her bucket clanged and scraped against the stone floor, sending up sparks. And at last, with her feet first in front of her and then somehow behind her, Kate tumbled and slid to a stop a few yards away from SQ, where she did a very convincing job of rolling her eyes back into her head. Kate! SQ cried, hurrying to check on her as the boys came running up. Step back, he ordered. Give her room to breathe. As Kate made a great production of fluttering her eyelashes and rolling her eyes loopily about, Renee and Sticky edged past SQ to talk to Charlie Peters, who stood a little distance away, gazing impassively down the corridor, apparently not the least interested in Kate's fate. A terribly pale boy with pale eyes, pale hair, and pale skin, Charlie looked like a wax figure. When the boys approached, he didn't even acknowledge them. He wore a faintly confused expression, as if he couldn't see why he had to leave the Institute, and why he couldn't just keep being a messenger forever. She'll be fine, Renee said, jerking a thumb toward Kate, as if Charlie might actually care. Falls down a lot, but she always recovers. What? Charlie said, looking at the boys for the first time. Renee's face took on a sympathetic expression. Oh, I guess your mind's on other things since you're graduating. No one could blame you for that. I'll bet you're sad to go, aren't you? You'll miss all those special privileges. What special privileges? Charlie said warily. I don't remember any special privileges. Being a messenger is a responsibility, a matter of leadership. When you're a messenger, you're so busy helping Mr. Curtin that you hardly have time to think. In fact, Charlie said, looking disappointed now, in fact, it seems like only yesterday I was made a messenger and now I'm going home already. I've been so busy that everything in between seems like a blur. Busy doing what? Sticky asked. Behind him, SQ was struggling to help Kate back to her feet. Kate was making it difficult by slipping on things that had spilled from her bucket. Charlie grew agitated. He glanced left and right and then fixed them with a decidedly suspicious look. I can't say. But why not? Renee urged. Did they threaten you? Can you tell us anything? Charlie shook his head doubtfully. He seemed to be considering, though, and the boys felt their hopes rise. Then he shook his head again, more vigorously this time. He seemed extremely distressed by their questioning. I can't say, he repeated. I really can't. Lucky to be alive, SQ was saying to Kate behind them. Then his voice sharpened. Hey, you boys get away from Charlie. Oh, okay. Bye, Charlie, Renee said quickly, and Sticky gave a playful salute, but Charlie only stared at them with distraught expression, as if they had done something grievously wrong. Casting the boys a disapproving look, SQ took Charlie's arm and led him away toward the exit. Any luck? Asked Constance, who had finally come down the corridor and was standing there conspicuously unhelpful as Kate gathered her things. Renee picked up Kate's slingshot and handed it to her. He isn't talking. He wouldn't say why. I did all that for nothing, cried Kate, dismayed. I'm not sure, Renee said. There's something curious about what Charlie said. Something... He frowned. I'm going to have to think about it. Anyway, Kate, don't tell us you didn't enjoy doing that, Sticky said. That's true, I did, Kate admitted, with an impish grin. How did it look? Looked like you fell out of an airplane, Renee said, as they started toward the cafeteria again. Really? Kate glazed at him with shining eyes. She was deeply touched. Tests and invitations. During the last class of the day, near the end of the lecture review, the classroom door flew open and Jackson came in. Don't mind me, he said to the executive he'd interrupted. Though the way Jackson strutted, it was clear he enjoyed the attention. Just posting the new messengers list. Every student in class sat upright. The new messenger list. It was well known that the list hasn't changed in over a month. Now, Charlie Peters' departure had left an open spot. Who had filled it? As Jackson hung the paper on the front of the room, everyone strained their eyes to make out the names. Kate was the only one sharp-eyed enough to succeed. No luck yet, she whispered to Renee. Your name's not on it. The moment class was dismissed, the students swarmed toward the list. Martina Crow, the first in line by virtue of her sharp elbows, announced that Bondi Hendrickson was the new messenger. This prompted a collective moan of disapproval. Still, no one stepped out of line. Everybody wanted to see for themselves, perhaps hoping Martina was playing a joke, or that Bonnie's name would magically disappear and be replaced by their own. The mysterious Benedict Society had gathered near the back. Let's get out of here, Kate said. It's Bonnie, all right. I saw her name. You three go on, said Renee, who felt strangely compelled to see the list up close. I'll meet you on the plaza. And so the others left, and Renee got in line, wondering why he had felt drawn to look. Perhaps he was not so different from the other students after all. Perhaps he too hoped for something impossible. The secret privileges, said a girl wistfully. And those tunics, said a boy. I'll get on top of that list if it kills me. Renee leaned sideways to see who was on the front of the line. Rosie Gardner and Eustace Crust, the two special recruits. Despite their confusing behavior, Renee still suspected them of having been kidnapped, and he found himself wondering yet again how they had come to be so pleased with their fates. Those initial dazed expressions long since evaporated. The special recruits were now all eagerness. Both had greedy glints in their eyes. Renee watched them leave the room with an unexpected pang of sympathy. Who had they been before? Had they, like Sticky, run away from home? Had they ever known parents at all? What kind of miserable life had they had? The Institute seemed so wonderful to them now. As the line moved forward, Renee had a flash of insight. He imagined the special recruits' features as they themselves must imagine them. With nowhere else to turn, no parents, no grandparents begging for their returns, they would devote themselves entirely to the Institute. They would rise through the ranks of messenger, wear their fancy tunics and sashes, and one day, when the time came, they would turn their backs on the outside world to become executives. It wouldn't matter how they had come here or what had come before. That part was already forgotten, or what else could be forgotten in this pleasurable rush of being important, of being part of something. Standing before the list now, Rene didn't even look at it. He simply realized he shifted into something else, a different feeling altogether. What was it? It certainly wasn't pleasant, though. Then, with a surprise, he recognized it. Jealousy. How strange, Rene said to himself. What is strange? Said a man's voice. Rene whirled to find himself face to face with Mr. Curtin, who stared keenly at him from behind his silver lenses. Lost in thought, Rene lingered after all the others had filed out, and now he found himself alone with the sender himself. All right, we'll stop right there. Like and subscribe. Click that bell for future notifications.